Hello, my name's Alec. I'm the technical manager at Quelfire, and on this episode, once again, we've got a fantastic guest. So I'm going to let Steven do his introduction. So Steven, if you can just let the audience know who you are, where you're from, and just a little bit about your background, just to give them a sort of a understanding of where you're coming from.
Thanks, Alec. My name's Steve. I'm the technical consultant at MIDFIX. We predominantly specialise in fixings and support bracketry for M&E installations. My own personal background is within this industry for just over 20 years, 25 years. Prior to that, I was an actual project manager for a subcontractor to the National Grid, beg your pardon. So yeah, I've got plenty of experience within the fixing, support, bracketry and general engineering field.
Thank you. And that's why we got you on. So the importance of this season has been to get those outside voices because, and I know we've been talking off camera and you're going to explain it more in this podcast, that especially with the introduction to the Building Safety Act, I think everyone is sort of people that weren't necessarily thinking they were going to be affected by it has started being affected by it. And I've been obviously looking at your fantastic LinkedIn posts on some of the stuff you're doing. So again, like Quelfire, you're very happy to share your knowledge and awareness to the industry, and you've got your own YouTube channel as well. So I'm going to dive straight in the deep end, and probably for our audience as well. But I think it's best to probably start with the standard. So I know there's a British standard you have to do. So it's 8539.
Correct.
So I just wondered, what is it? Why is it important, and what should people know about it?
Mentioned before in the intro that we look at the fixings and the support bracket.
Yeah.
The fixings, even though it's probably the weakest part of that connection, the interface between the supports and the substrate usually is the weakest point. It's actually the easiest point to tackle because there is a BS standard behind it. BS 8539 came out in 2012. Unfortunately, in our industry, hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn here, but it was widely ignored. Till circa 10 years ago, 8, 9, 10 years ago, a couple of the larger M&E contractors in the country started taking notice of it because of a few issues that they've had. Its primary function is to reduce the risk of incorrect anchor selection and anchor failure. Might be worth pointing out at this point, anchor failures, in my experience, hardly ever occur, but we attend collapses on a sort of weekly or fortnightly basis, and it's normally down to the installer. So BS 8539 looks at all of the possible risk factors. There's plenty of stakeholders. There's the designers, whether it's the principal designer or a designer later down the chain. The manufacturers of the anchors have a part to play within BS 8539. The distributors, like we are, a distributor. Also the people doing the testing. So this mythical pull test that everyone asks about, it's how to conduct the pull test correctly and what the tests actually mean. Yeah, so BS 8539 does affect everybody, and obviously the end contractor.
So I suppose the key takeaway there, you mentioned the different stakeholders, but obviously there's a lot of emphasis on the principal designer. There's a lot of signing off and making sure everyone's competent. For someone out there that's watching this, they may not even heard of that, but that is something they need to be aware of, that they're sticking to those, making sure that they're picking the right products and stuff like that as well, and imagine.
Well, that's actually, you raised a great point there. You've mentioned the principal designer. In an ideal world, that's where we would start. That is the individual that should be doing the anchor specification.
Yeah.
It very rarely happens that way.
Yeah.
So I'll be perfectly frank with you, within the supports world, M&E supports, not many of them are designed. Therefore, not many of the anchors are selected correctly. It's usually left. What will happen with the principal designer is they will leave the spatial awareness required for that support bracket. They don't actually have the knowledge to do the actual connection details themselves, so they'll leave that further down the line. So either, in some instances, the tier one might do the design and the specification, or more often than not, the installing contractor will do the specification of the anchors. And this is where it often goes wrong. Let's go back pre-Building Safety Act, so pre-2022. A typical specification would be a contractor would land on site. They'd look at the runs that they had to install that following week or month. They'd pick the phone up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They would order 6 boxes of M10x30 drop-ins because they've always used them. They've never let them down. Then the next day, those anchors are delivered. That was their specification process based on historical usage and historical knowledge. I'm afraid that's just simply not a specification process. It needs bringing way, way, way forward, because we have to consider several factors when specifying an anchor.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And obviously, I know we had a conversation before the podcast, but I think you're right. I think I hate to use the term dinosaurs, but I think there are people that are sort of stuck in that, well, I've always done it this way mentality, and they're not realizing that they've got to evolve and adapt to the changes with regulation, but also I think changes with the times. I mean, what services were running a building 20 or even 5 years ago is very different nowadays. So there's going to be a lot of factors there. So I suppose for anyone watching there, I mean, especially I'm trying to think of this from my aspect as well, but if they, like when we do specification, they can't, especially with the way the Building Safety Act works with our systems, they can't simply just swap it for some alternative. There's a change process. So is there a similar thing for the anchors? I mean, or can they just use something similar, or
Specification is key, but I think more importantly, data is key behind the products.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you've specified a product, you'll have a raft of data behind that product as to why it's been specified for that application, because obviously not all anchors are suitable for all applications. Once the product is specified, then it needs to be specified down to the part number. That's a specification, not a description. So you can't just have an M10 by 70 through bolt, for instance. It has to be a make, manufacturer, and a part number, because all anchors perform differently under different circumstances. So that's the specification. However, in BS 8539, I think it's clause 10, there is a change management process. So you can change specification, but it certainly isn't just changing it for the description. So you can't have an anchor that looks the same on paper. We need to go through the whole due diligence. So if we're asked to change the specification, we will look at the substrate, we will look at the loads, we'll look at the environment, we'll look at all those conditions that we need to look at, specify a new anchor from there, and then we notify the original specifier. That's the key thing. That needs to be a circular bit of information going around so everyone's aware of why the specification is changed. And it's a great point, because following installer errors, we do see anchors that are specified incorrectly on site, and it's usually because they've been changed for some reason. It could be the fact that the specified anchor isn't available that particular time when you need it from a distributor. It could be even, a lot of the time, it's actually changed for cost reasons. Yeah. So we change specifications for cost. So we look for the cheapest anchor that has that same description, because surely an M10 by 70 through bolt, they all work the same. They all perform the same. Well, the simple answer is no, they don't all perform the same, and they don't all have the accreditation. So you're familiar with the ETA systems in anchors, We often find ETA specified anchors, which they all should be, have been changed for non-ETA approved anchors because of a cost saving.
Yeah, value engineering is
bane
of everyone's existence.
It's a horrible term.
It's a horrible, but unfortunately it's happening. So obviously, I know with your supports, it's a building wide issue, because it's not just going to be the firewalls, etc. But
correct.
I saw on a couple of your posts on LinkedIn, which obviously was resonating with ourselves, is how many times you get asked, can you supply a fire rated support? So I was just wondering to sort of clear up, because again, I think it's purely just a misunderstanding when people ask these questions of, it's not really a simple answer to give, is it?
No, it's more than it's a great question to ask, and I'm going to show my age now, but I hope we've got enough tape left in the films to answer this one. But we get asked, I would say it's not quite daily, but certainly weekly. We need a fire rated support. The term they use is fire rated most of the time. There is simply no such thing as a fire rated support. There's no harmonized standards behind. Correction, there was never a harmonized standard behind an actual support structure. Bearing in mind, when we're talking about support, we look at the fixing and the support itself, whether it's a trapeze, whether it's a module, a cantilever, could even be an AHU frame, anything that carries the service load is a support. But we also include the fixing on that as well, because it's a system at the end of the day. And going back to, you mentioned before about the Hackett report, one of the criticisms for our industry was the fact that we mixed and matched products. So taking one product from one manufacturer with a tested detail behind it, another product from another manufacturer with a tested detail, as soon as they're put together, that data's gone. And it's that word data again. We need the data behind our products in order to specify them. So a fire rated support is a very difficult question to ask. And we've kind of petted ourselves into the corner in the industry by there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah.
So the only way you can, I'll use the term rate for fire resistance, is to look at the actual application that support is being asked to work in. So you cannot have simply a product, let's say a length of channel, that is fire rated. Because once it's put into an application, it's all dependent on the load path. It depends on where the load is and how much the load is and the spans and the sensors to be able to calculate the fire resistance of that particular bracket.
Yeah.
We've then got the other problem with a channel-based system is it's thin wall, it's open-sided. It doesn't react very well in fire, to be honest with you. So we are limited in the spans, particularly that a channel-based system can take, particularly at the higher elevated temperatures that you'll get at 90 and 120 minutes.
Yeah.
So then, we need to look at alternatives. We need to look at welded box section steel that give us a thicker product that we can start resisting those reactions at the elevated temperatures. So yes, we can do it. We can provide you with a fire resistant bracket to a certain time and temperature, but it's all to do with the application that it's being asked. So basically what we're saying is the bracket has to be designed.
Yeah, I was going to say you've got to have that conversation.
Correct.
It works in our way where people will read our product data sheet and say the fire collar says up to 2 hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does. But it's dependent on the application. It's the whole
correct
system as such working together in unison. So
correct.
I think that's a good point that you raised earlier, that the people that are looking just to order on a Thursday and not really thought about the design and that, those days have gone then.
The simple answer to those people that ring up asking for that is, I'm sorry, we can't help. We've had it very recently, a matter of a month or so ago. We've been asked on 2 large projects in London to retrospectively design their bracketries for elevated temperature conditions. It's already installed. Impossible. The design will change. So you'd have to decommission the whole install, take your supports out, reinstall new design supports. So it's bringing that as early as possible to the table, and it's asking the right questions.
No, it's open. Like I said, that's why I read your articles and stuff on the thing, because again, I think too many of us are in bubbles or silos, and it can affect what we do as well as yourselves.
Yeah.
So it's got to be that collaboration. So sort of tying it back in, because there might be some people now sat there like shocked that they've never heard of this or anything like that. So I mean, the likes of yourselves are quite willing to give out that knowledge and expertise. So is there any sort of like training that MIDFIX offer on this side of thing, or is any support? What are you doing to try and elevate people's knowledge and awareness?
Yeah, well, we're doing as many awareness sessions as we can. It's all generic, so it's not towards MIDFIX. It is a generic approach to the industry. So we're active in the industry on a daily basis, and we talk to the biggest contractors and the smallest contractors. So we have a pretty good broad spread of what's happening out there. We have some fantastic colleagues that work within our customer base that are hugely knowledgeable on this subject. So together, we're gaining a bit of a forum, because particularly when you're talking about fire for support brackets, there is a plethora of standards that different manufacturers quote out there for their products. Each one of those standards, let's take BS 8519 for instance, it's a standard for the critical cabling survival times. In there is an annex, I think it's Annex E, that tells us, it gives us a nice little formula to work out the resistance in the drop rod to see how much that drop rod will take in elevated temperatures. But a lot of manufacturers will quote, but it doesn't tell you actually that standard about the bearer, the channel. It just says it needs to be adequately sized. So, that's
open to interpretation.
It is open to interpretation. So you need to start doing engineering judgments, and the whole point of the Building Safety Act is to work away from engineering judgments to tested, proven systems.
Yeah.
So all these standards out there, they all have some good areas about them, but when it comes to support bracketry, they don't address support bracketry as a whole. So everybody needs to be aware of what these standards mean, because it's very easy for a manufacturer to quote a standard.
Yeah.
And as far as a contractor is concerned, they've heard the tick box that they need. Oh, that's got a BS standard behind it. Therefore, I've answered the question, it's fire rated.
Yeah.
Well, it simply isn't. You need to understand the standards as well.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. But I suppose, again, this might just, I'm assuming it's going to be the same in your industry as ours. Do you think there's like a skill shortage or understanding in the industry as well?
So I think I think everybody at MIDFIX would agree with me on this one. The biggest challenge our industry is facing is not actually the products. The products already exist. It's the competency of the individuals working in our industry and proving that competency. That's going to be the biggest challenge. It certainly is at the moment. How do you prove competency? You can sit a half-hour training course. That certainly doesn't make you competent. It might give you part of the knowledge you require for your competency, but it's a huge journey.
This might again be slightly off the topic, but I was on the website and looking at a few things, and I noticed there's, again, we're trying to develop tools to help people and stuff like that. And there was something on yours, I think it was dynaMX.
dynaMX.
Yeah, dynaMX.
All right.
Sorry,
Okay. Yeah.
terrible pronunciation.
That's all right.
on
Don't
this.
worry. Close enough.
But that's a help, because again, I'm going back to the skill shortage and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How is that going to help? Because I believe that's a configuration tool that's been designed.
It is.
Stuff. Yeah. So can you sort of explain that more? Maybe that some people out there that might benefit them and stuff like that as well.
Sure. So if we go back to the BS8539 about anchors, it's there to prove the anchor install. In order to prove a bracketry install, it needs to have a design behind it. So we need to understand that the channel and the rods can take all the reactions acting on them. The only way you can do that is to go through design. As a starting point, going back to, I think it was 2017, we started a tested channel system. That is where we have a system designed for M&E supports, channel-based system designed purely for M&E supports, and all the connection details are tested and understood, including the tensile load on the drop rod, the connections on a trapeze, the connections on a module, compressive load, tensile, everything is understood. All that information is then plugged into a bit of software we call dynaMX. So the reason for dynaMX is, going back right to the beginning of this conversation, the key question we're trying to answer, or we're trying to give our contractors the ability to answer, and the key question they should be asking themselves is, the support bracket I've just installed, can I prove what it can take? That's the key question, okay? When we ask that question to contractors, they sometimes put their arms in the air saying, well, I've been doing this 30 years and nothing's ever collapsed. Well, first of all, a round of applause that nothing's ever happened, but you haven't answered the question. Can you prove it?
Yeah.
So you can't prove a support structure without being able to pin it back to a design. So we mentioned again previous that most support brackets are not designed. They get pushed down and down and down and down the chain. The final installing contractor gets the job. They don't have the time to do the design. So we developed dynaMX to give them the ability to carry out a very quick design. Currently version 1 is on simple trapezes. Version 2 can do more complex supports, but it works on 5 principles. We look at the operator will input the dimensions of the bracket. Then point 2, they will put the services, so we can populate the bracket with services, mechanical and electrical services. Point 3 is we look at the substrate. So currently dynaMX can calculate a fixing for either concrete or metal decking. So on concrete, it assumes it's a new build. It assumes compressive strength of C20 upwards. It assumes that they're all ETA approved anchors. And so long as you've put the information in correctly, it will select the right anchor for you. Point 4 is it will give you a model. So you can articulate that design that you've just done and have a look at that design. You can actually export that as well and pop it into the main model. And then point 5, that's the bit you want, it's the report. So I think it's an 18, 19-page report that gives you all the maths behind the support to say, yes, it can take the service loads that you are saying it's been applied to. And when you look at the 2D image it gives you, as long as you build it correctly, that bracket can't fail. If there is a failure, something else has induced that failure. So it's the whole point of it is, within 2 minutes, you can design a fairly simple trapeze bracket with whatever services you want on it, but it gives you a report to have as your golden thread. When somebody asks me, what can that bracket take? The report proves that that bracket can take the loads you've said and it's going to be subjected to.
Yeah, no, interesting. Obviously, we're talking before the podcast, but you're saying like you have to go to sites to see where things have gone wrong and that, and it tends to be not the bits that have been designed properly and you've got the data, you then find out it's an install issue or something like that.
Yeah, usually piggybacking, parasitic loading's a big issue. So even if a bracket's designed correctly, you could have another contractor support from your bracket with additional loads that the original designer didn't know about. So that certainly needs a lot of work as well.
For us, again, it's key that they give you the right information at the start, because substrates, you just mentioned a few there, that changes our solution quite heavily if it's a hollow core floor to a concrete profile deck.
And we need that information because designing a bracket for 120 minutes is hard compared to designing a bracket for a 30-minute resistance. It's much easier for a third. So that information is crucial to us. And at the end of the day, it will speed the job up.
Yeah, no, I think obviously I've said this on a few podcasts. I do think we're having a bit of an uphill battle because it's like you said, people are like, I've never had to do this.
Yeah,
I've never seen
I've always
any
done it this
problems.
way.
I've done it this way. But I think the projects that are starting to do a more design and then build approach, they're seeing the benefits. We did a white paper on it that showed some of the main contractors how much money they were able to actually save because they weren't having to go and reinstall things and stuff like that.
The cultural thing has to change. What we're being asked to do now with the onset of the Building Safety Act, I'll struggle to find somebody who doesn't agree with it. It's there for the right reasons, okay? So you're paying for a product with data, whereas a product without data, you're going to struggle, hopefully soon, you'll struggle getting past Gateway 2, for instance, because you don't have the data.
Which I think it's that's one of the things I like, the fact that people are checking things and going, actually, that doesn't meet the spec I need.
They're getting better at it. Yeah, they're getting better at it.
But I like, in fact, you said it earlier, and it's something that we say, we actually say we don't sell products, we sell systems.
Correct.
And it's the overall package. And I think what people need to realize when you're buying something, and it sounds like the sell from yourself, is it's that support behind it. You're getting your expertise, the data, the support, all those aspects. So I think that's, again, people, like you said, look for it like for like. Don't just look at, we have it all the time where they look at one product, well, this costs 5 pence more than this product. Yeah, but our other products that you need for that system cost less. So actually, if you work it out as a whole, it's cheaper. And again, you shouldn't rush to the bottom for price, but you've got to look at the value.
It's a powerful driver because, the industry isn't renowned for double-digit profits, is it? So there is a reason, and cost does have to come into it at some point. But we need to be comparing like for like. That's the key thing. And the other thing that sometimes you have to bear in mind when it comes to procuring products is, if you're not careful, the procurement teams can actually be assuming design liability by making those changes.
No, I don't
So
say
if
that.
they procure on price, that liability is with you then, you're deemed to have gone through the due diligence. So,
but I think as well, the more they do it, if you get yourselves in early enough, like I tried to get in as early as possible, Reba stage 3 or 4 type areas, they can work out that budget a bit better to go, actually, we now know what we need. We've got all this aspect. This is what we need. And you can have that conversation with, I know, for example, I've worked with some tier ones now that having that good conversations with their customers going, look, from previous experience, we think it's this, but we just want to do a design and then we can give you a more accurate budget. So you're not coming back in the end and going, we need 600% more than what you've tested as such. So
it will become easier. We're seeing some real good green shoots of people trying the best to do it right. But I think we mentioned earlier, before we started this podcast, that we've got a situation now where you get some contractors wanting to do things correctly. Other contractors are still in the old school of doing things, and they come in and tender a bit cheaper. So the people doing it correctly are at a bit of a disadvantage. There'll become a parity there. It will take time, but I genuinely feel we've come a long way. We mentioned right at the beginning of this about BS 8539 came out in 2012, but it was ignored for a long time. And now, some of the green shoots out there is, if we look at all the big tier ones, they literally all have BS 8539 down in their policies. They have ETA approved anchors only to be used. Some of them now even have introduced tested channel systems only to be used. The problems are not there, actually. They're the green shoots. The bigger contractors are the green shoots. They are doing all they can. They're training the individuals as well. So to answer that question, can you prove what your bracket can take? We need 2 bits of evidence. We need the evidence behind the products, but then we also need the evidence that the installers understand what they're doing with those products, how to build that bracket correctly. And this applies to all tested systems, by the way, not just our system MX. It applies to all systems. They have to be built correctly. Each joint needs to be repeatable and predictable. The only way you can do that is to use a torque wrench. 5 years, no, not even 5 years ago, 3 years ago, a torque wrench was a rare beast on a construction site, very rare. Now we are coming across them. So that it is coming through. It's a big industry to change. It's a huge culture to change, but it is changing. I think the key takeaway we're getting from this is most of the big contractors now are looking at training. They are looking at, they're wanting to do it, to do the job correctly. The issues, as I was getting to, so your bigger contractors are doing it right. The issues tend to be with the smaller contractors. They're the ones that tend to buy the mixed and match systems because they're more economical. The message has to come through, and the tier ones and the larger contractors have to start policing their projects, because that still doesn't occur.
I think one of the also things, and you said it earlier, and you probably said a mistake, I think, again, what Quelfire benefits from is actually we're not afraid to say the word no.
Oh, 100%.
And that's where I think, again,
100%.
As manufacturers or providers and stuff like that, I think having that ability to stand up to things and go, no, we're not willing to put our name on that and stuff like that. I think that's beneficial.
We just can't. If we're doing a design, we're taking the liability.
Yeah.
If we don't have the information, it's a no. If a lot of the installs that customers are asking, they're just not possible.
Yeah.
Not with the system that they want. It's a complete redesign, and we have to say no, because we won't write something off ourselves. It's got to be we have to pin something back to a standard. That's how we operate. So if we can pin it back to a standard and it works, great, we'll do those designs for you. It sometimes takes time because we need the information out of you to do that design properly. Even a simple trapeze needs information to design. We're not just creating a drawing, it's a live item. We need to understand how it performs.
I said it before, but I applaud, because I think, again, that's why I wanted these outside voices, because sometimes we feel we're alone. I know our technical team are like,
you're not.
Are we the only ones there? But it's good to share
what
that
are we doing
others,
wrong?
And others are in the same boat, and
Correct,
it's good. But I do actually feel a bit more sorry for yourself, because there's obviously a lot of highlight on fire, which is just one small aspect, but obviously your supports, especially when you've got like the load cycle and stuff like that, it's the whole building. So they really need to get you in early enough to get that, because it could so easily go wrong.
It does. I mean, taking fire away from it, looking at another issue area is rooftop supports for ductwork.
Yeah.
We always ask, do you want the wind load calculation doing on that? Well, how much is that? And we'll give them a figure. Oh, no, you're all right. We won't bother. So we'll do a static design for that. Then further down the line, they'll come back saying, it needs wind loadings now. Well, your design will change. Well, how will it change? I thought you've designed, we've designed it for static condition. Once you've got wind loads into it, which is why there's a cost behind the wind load calculations, bracing comes into it, ballast comes into it, there's a whole raft of different changes. So there's a common theme, isn't there? There's cost as well. That comes into the equation.
Well, I think that's why there's going to be the teething problems. So I think people need to realise that, they'll be able to better. I can't remember, I think it's Wilmot Dixon have done it. They've done a very good article on explaining why they're now tendering at such a higher than before. But it's because, well, not only that, they've also taken into account insurance, which people don't think about now, because you can do a basic design, but your insurance is going to be very high, because especially when it comes to fire, or you can do a more comprehensive design, taking in a lot of more variables, and your insurance is low. So it's that balance. I said again, it's a collaborated system, and it's good to see there. So I suppose, because obviously we'll try and keep these short and stuff, but any questions we'll get, I'd love to get you back, because I know there's going to be things. So just for the audience out there, because obviously we've mentioned a lot, and I know this is going to be very new for a lot of people, and like I said, it's not just about fire, there's a lot of aspects. What if anyone's looking to get some training or get some knowledge, what's the best avenues?
If you look at midfix.co.uk, we have an academy page on there. So we have currently there's 3 training programs on there. We are going through a rehash now, so it's going more in depth.
Yeah.
We're also working on a qualification in the background, which will come out in due time. But the best place to start with us is on the website, and to gain that. And we do plenty of awareness sessions. We find them the best thing. We do what we like to do with, and it's something that the tier ones encourage as well. Once they've got a large project, we will do an awareness session to all the subcontractors on that particular
so like project. A toolbox talk type thing, is it? Or
it's a little bit more than a toolbox talk. But it's awareness as to why that particular tier one is asking them to jump through the hoops that they think they're jumping through. It's generic again, so it's not biased towards MIDFIX, but it is a generic approach. So ETA approved anchors, tested channel systems are all in there. But most importantly, it's educating the subcontractor as to why they're being asked to use those particular products. And we also touch on the Building Safety Acts, and it's still rife out there that it's got nothing to do with me. It's only to do with high-risk buildings.
That's James Hacker actually said the same thing. It's all buildings.
It's everything. And the competency, again, going back to the competency, is everything. So, you know, we need to work towards that. So the best place for us is to start on our website, visit the academy, drop us a line, and we'll come and talk to you.
So yeah, thank you very much. Any questions, I will forward them on. And if you would like us to dive into this topic more, please let us know. And hopefully Steve will be very kind enough to rejoin us. So thank you very much.
Thank
See
you
you on the next episode.